Wonderful.
Welcome, everybody. We are joined today, and I'm so excited by Diana Mayorga. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. To give you a little bit of perspective, I actually met Diana at Mount Royal College when I was taking my level 1 Reiki training. So I had no idea what to expect. And I remember that night, I'm like, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? There's got to be some sort of sign. And then out of nowhere, this noise, like it's the middle of the night, and I hear ooh, 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 ooh. And I'm like, what is that? And it was like this owl that came, and I'd never heard it before, and I've never heard it again. But that night it came and it oohed me to go to the actual course the next day.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Isn't that
Wow.
bizarre? I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, is this something I should do? I didn't know much about it. So I wanted you to come on and explain to everybody what you do, what Reiki is, energy medicine, everything. So I'm going to zip it and I'm going to hand it over to you. Just tell us a little bit more about Diana and what you do.
sure. Thank you. And that's a great story and introduction, and definitely a common experience for a lot of students that come to Reiki at Mount Royal University here. There's some sort of push sign, you could call it, to just give them that little bit of confidence and nudge.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been practicing Reiki since 2004. I like to say that I went to Hogwarts, which I kind of did.
Okay.
Wild Rose College,
Okay.
we actually call it, and it used to be physically here in Calgary, in Kensington. I think it probably shut down there around 2010. Dr. Terry Willard used to run the college. You might be familiar with him if you're 35 and up with Wild Rose detoxes
Yes,
and
that's
those
what it, I'm
things.
like, I have heard that name
Yeah.
before.
So that's where I studied clinical herbology, but I also had the opportunity to study everything from Reiki to psychic work to Indigenous studies, and
Wow.
yeah, it was an amazing time.
Okay.
So now Yarrow Willard, his son, runs Wild Rose College still from the island, from Vancouver Island. So I'm
Okay.
really, yeah, I'm so happy to see that. Not that it ever really closed down, but it definitely had a Phoenix Rising situation a few years back, and now it's different, but just as wonderful.
So is there a physical location, or is it moved all online now, or is it sort of hybrid?
Hybrid, yeah, I would say hybrid. I'm not entirely sure. I graduated from Wild Rose College in 2008. I had my Reiki Master Certificate in 2006.
Okay.
So, yeah, I still worked within the realm of Wild Rose at the clinic, at the college. I was teaching until about 2012.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, between 2010 and 2012, it kind of was in the process of closing itself down here in Calgary. And yeah, that's when I mean, I had my first son in 2010. So there was in between kids on and off, but that's when I really started uh,
Right.
taking off with Reiki practice and Reiki teaching. And then
Okay.
I Mount Royal College maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay. And so for
Yeah.
those that have no idea what Reiki is, how would you best sum it up?
I know, and you giggle because you've been there like me. It's kind of how do I sum up Reiki?
Yeah.
So Reiki is from Japan, early 1920s, from Dr. Usui. And so the word Reiki, being Japanese, translates into something like universal life force, spiritual life force, the ray, the chi, the life force of what's there. So much gets lost in translation, so it's very, very hard to find the right words in English to
Right.
describe these ancient characters and concepts that have very big stories to them.
Right.
The best way to describe Reiki to someone that's never experienced it is to ask them if they've ever felt better after a good hug, when
Right.
they've had that energy exchange, particularly when there's an intent to help.
Okay.
So if someone comes up to yourself and you're having a difficult moment day, year, and they intend to help you and give you a nice hug, there's an energy exchange there, particularly if you feel safe with them and you're open to receive that energy exchange. So with Reiki, we definitely talk a lot about intent. That's really important. And then this exchange of energy. The one of the fundamental pieces to understand is it's not our energy. So I'm not giving someone, I'm not depleting my own energy, and nobody wants my energy anyways. We all have our own garbage, traumas, and ancestral, who knows what. We're not passing on our own energy. We're letting that life force energy move through us to someone else, ideally with no attachment to outcome. The recipient receives that energy, and then they themselves heal, move energy around. There's so much that we don't know about it. Okay. There's such a difficulty in even describing it, other than the very basics that we seem to understand, which is it's a universal life force of energy moving through the Reiki practitioner.
Right.
To someone or something else. It can be a plant, animal, child, inanimate object, location, situation. There's really no limit to what you can send Reiki
also,
to.
Almost like the Reiki practitioner acts as a vessel.
100%. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a vessel, which kind of takes the kind of ego superpower out of it, which is okay. But we work through that a lot in the first couple of levels where people ask questions like, do you have to be innately good at this sort of thing? Or are some people just born with gifts to it?
Right.
Yes, no, kind of. Everybody can do Reiki. It's not a superpower that's given to just a particular amount of people born on particular days by sacred sites. And everyone can do Reiki for sure.
Okay.
Some people do feel like yourself drawn to it a little bit more innately, but.
Okay. And you can do Reiki on yourself.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that, because this is the biggest misconception, although Reiki is very popular right now, so we're having more conversation, but the biggest misconception is that you study Reiki and get your attunement if you have intention on being a professional Reiki practitioner. It kind of begins and ends there. And this is actually not what Dr. Asui intended back in 1920 when he received Reiki. Dr. Asui Hayashi, his direct apprentice, and we call Takata, our grandmother of Reiki, who brought it out to the West. They all agreed that Reiki should be a tool that anyone and everyone can have, particularly for their self-healing. So Dr. Asui didn't want just a handful of Reiki authorities out there in the world, and they were the only ones equipped to practice on themselves and others. Absolutely not. They wanted everyone to have accessibility to this tool for self-care and self-healing, and then, of course, to share it with others if they feel inclined to. Saying that, something that I absolutely love, half of all the students in class now are there for that reason. They're just for themselves. Yeah, just for their own growth, their own presence with themselves, their own healing. And then the other half kind of cut into two groups, and about a quarter of the class is there for professional reasons.
Yeah.
And then the other is there for maybe themselves, friends, and family, but still not with a professional goal. So I can say that only around a quarter of the class is there to become Reiki practitioners or adding Reiki to their profession, which is totally flip-flop from 10 years ago.
Very interesting. So then what is the process for, you had mentioned attunement. So tell us what that means.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to use a bit of an analogy. And again, if you're, I'm going to say if you're under 20, you're going to have to listen real hard because it's kind of an old one. It's an old analogy here.
Okay.
So the Reiki attunement is sort of like this. If you and I were talking and I were to say to you, there's this great Reiki talk show and it's on 9 a.m. every morning on the AM radio.
Right.
See?
Okay.
It's the old one. It's the old one. And I use radio on purpose. I'm using an archaic analogy on purpose because radios pick up frequencies, right? Yes. So if I tell you that there's a great talk show on every morning on the AM at 9 o'clock, that's a little bit of information, but you're going to be really struggling to find that frequency and tune in because I didn't give you the station number.
Right.
So an attunement is me now saying it's, the 6:10 on the AM at 9 o'clock every morning. Now you can find it. And that frequency is suddenly very accessible. So an attunement is pretty much exactly the same. The Reiki master holds that Reiki frequency. And during an attunement, the Reiki master basically hands it to the student and says, hey, here's the frequency. This is what it feels like, sounds like. This is how it vibrates. Now you can grab a hold of that if you like. It's not as intrusive as, I'm always online watching TikToks and YouTubes and so forth. Attunements definitely have been made to sound a little bit more intrusive, like psychic surgery. In my experience and training, it's not exactly that, saying, hey, here's the details of this frequency, and now you know it, now you've seen it, heard it, felt it, and now it's accessible at all times for the rest of your life.
Wow. And so there's sort of a progression as well, though. You start at level 1.
Yeah.
And then what happens? And what can you do with level 1? Like, how does it all work?
Yeah, good question. So you start at level 1, and I always say level 1 should be accessible to everyone. So I give attunements to children. My 7-year-old's a Reiki master.
Right. Okay.
You don't really have an age limit or even an education threshold for that. So someone can come and receive an attunement from a family member with just a bit of a blurb, a little micro training, and then they can go off and feel really comfortable with that. So Reiki level 1 is intended for self-care mostly. So you can definitely practice on others. Level 1, if you come to, let's say, the university, it's a lot of foundational knowledge. I always warn the students, they said there's 52 slides. There's a lot of info to go over. We want to make sure you have a solid foundation, particularly if you're going to go off and practice and teach one day.
Right.
But ideally, after level 1, you do 21 days of self-care. That's right from recommendations from Dr. Usui. That's how he founded Reiki, after a 21-day fast, and hiked up one of his favorite smaller mountains and received Reiki in that moment. So we kind of mirror that with the 21 days of self-care, self-treatment.
Right.
And then, of course, you can practice on others, but level 1 is really designed for that basic foundational experience. And I always say, at that point, you're building your relationship with Reiki, because your relationship with Reiki will be different than mine, will be different from the next person. So, and then level two, we do focus quite a bit more on education. So I wouldn't say that you should maybe go out there if you're a Reiki master and be attuning everyone and anyone for level 2. We want a little bit more knowledge, particularly because we're doing distance healing. So this is where it can get really fun. And I absolute favorite levels, level 2, for this reason. This is when we can send that Reiki long distance through space and time, which is even more fun. So there's a lot of somatic healing, tapping. There's so many therapies out there where hearts work, where we're going into the past to help heal ourselves and others. So this is where level 2 can facilitate that work as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Master, what does that entail?
Masters is really cool. So masters, again, the misconception is you only go on to masters if you're thinking about practicing or teaching, because it is called the teacher level, the master teacher level. Now, I find even the students that are there for personal development, they get a deeper understanding, a deeper connection to their Reiki experience. And then they always have in their back pocket that they can give someone an attunement if needed down the line. Also, learning the attunement process, which is the real focus for the masters, other than just diving a bit deeper into Reiki and our understanding of Reiki. We're learning how to give attunements now.
Okay.
And in learning how to give attunements, we don't just connect to the steps of that attunement. We actually learn something called the circulation of light, which is used by energy practitioners, monks, and meditation masters throughout the world, and many, many more. circulation of light being a practice where you're actually not just bringing the energy in, but you're circulating it at such speed that it's amplifying.
Okay.
So it's just another tool in your toolbox that I would highly recommend if someone is continuing to feel that pull towards learning.
Wow. And so obviously Mount Royal University, they started up again because for a
Yeah.
while there throughout COVID,
Yeah.
everything was sort of, well, the world was shut down. So,
Yes. Yes.
and how many times per year do you offer it at the university?
So we're about 80% back to what we used to be. We have our fall semester. Right now we're just finishing up our winter, and then we move into a spring, and we used to even have a summer because it was just so full and popular. But for fall, winter, spring, so 3 semesters there. Every semester we cycle through 2 level 1s, 2 level 2s, and then 1 master.
At the end of, okay.
Yeah, and then we cycle through the next. And students often say, well, can I do them all in one semester, or do I have to wait? And there's so many opinions and information online on how long you should have to wait. I've always said that Takada's our grandmother of Reiki here out West. Her main goal with bringing Reiki to the Western world was to make it accessible.
Okay.
And that meant instead of training for 2 years, like you would do back in Japan, you can train for 2 hours per level, or 8 hours at Mount Royal, or whatever you need. But the idea is there are no rules. It's about accessibility. So if you have to do it in a semester, or that feels best for you, do it all 3 levels in a semester. If you want to do the first 2 and wait 6 months a year for masters, that's good too. But there's no, out West, I can say with confidence, there's no definitive way or timelines that you want to study all levels. So
now on the flip side, does like a training lapse after a period of time and you have to repeat it, or?
Good question. Okay, so with MRU, I believe it's 3 years. So you have 3 years to go from 1 through masters. You do have to, if you want to end at masters through MRU, you have to complete all 3 levels through MRU. So you can't study one with someone else and then jump in. You have to have completion of all 3 through Mount Royal.
Gotcha.
And that has to be done within 3 years, I'm fairly certain. And then Reiki, aside from MRU, once you have your attunement, it never goes away.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, you don't ever have to get it again. If you feel you want the confidence boost, absolutely. I have many students that come into class. Some of them don't tell me, which is really fun. So they don't tell me they've already had an attunement. And then I do the attunements, and I say after to a couple of them, because there's about 1 student at least per class, I say, hey, your attunement, it was real smooth. That was interesting. Have you had an attunement before? And more often than not, yeah, I have. It was 10 years ago. It was like 12 years ago. And it just feels, I mean, I've been doing this long enough. It just feels different. So I that's almost for me personally evidence that it doesn't go away.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is there anything else that you would tell somebody who's thinking about learning more about Reiki?
Sure, absolutely. Picking your teacher is really important. I think you want to align yourself with a teacher that shares similar viewpoints and mindsets, because there are so many different teachers out there. The biggest questions, even complaints I get in class is when they were learning Reiki before, they're looking into who to learn Reiki from, that it seemed to be quite far from the traditional form of Reiki.
Okay.
So there's a couple of ways of looking at that. Again, Usui, Hayashi, and Takada, they all encouraged people to be innovative with Reiki and to grow it and to mature it. So they wanted the foundational pieces to be given, but they wanted it to evolve. So we definitely don't want to hinder that. But sure, there's a part of me, a traditionalist, a pragmatic sort of part of me that wants to always have that foundational piece there. So when picking a teacher, get a sense of how they teach, what their background is, how long they've been practicing teaching, just so that you really know if you're going to line up with that particular individual. And it's not that there's better or worse teachers out there. but there's a lot of different teachers out there. So you
Right.
want to make sure that you can gel really well. On top of that, if you're looking for a more professional future in Reiki, you want to make sure you're going somewhere like MRU that has an 8-hour minimum to each day. Uh,
Okay.
Particularly if you want to be part of like the Canadian Reiki Association, or the Natural Healthcare Practitioner membership and insurance. They offer a lot through their organization. They will require longer chunks of training and material, and they recognize MRU for that. So
Okay.
for example, I have private classes. They're mini classes for 2 hours. Those are per level. Those are more for professionals that maybe they'll go off to be Reiki practitioners, but they're not interested in the memberships with those organizations. But more often than not, they could be therapists that want to use Reiki to clear themselves in their room, or they maybe they work at show homes and they want to just juju up the energy before people come in. Like, so they're,
Bye.
yeah, right. So they're not necessarily needing that MRU certificate. They just want to learn through someone that they connect with. And the last thing I would say about that is this is my opinion. Also, from what we can tell, Asui and Hayashi would agree with this, and Takata, that Reiki is not a religion.
Okay.
And this is a big stumbling block for
Right.
many individuals that feel if they have a religion in their life that they follow, or even a spiritual practice, that they have to kind of take that off for a second and put it aside to learn Reiki. And this is absolutely not true. One of my favorite memories is the first church, and just for confidentiality, I won't say name or location, but the first church I taught Reiki to, there was about 20 something of their members, and I taught Reiki there for level 1, and they brought their religion into it. And it was, even though it was through me, it was also through their God, and that attunement was held within that space, that sacred space, and that connection to their God. And it was lovely. And I was so moved by it. And it was such proof that it's not a religion, it's a practice. You could think of it as a meditative energy practice.
Right.
We know meditation in the same way is not a religion.
Right.
So it is accessible again to everyone.
But I think the biggest way that you can help with that is to educate people about that, right? Because just not
Yes.
knowing what it is, you automatically go there. Like even when
Yeah.
I'm teaching yoga, the same sort of thing. We're like,
Yes.
oh, well, yoga's a religion. Well, no, it's not a religion. So same sort of thing. But I think you just have to, if you don't know what you don't know, right? So
That's
people
right.
are always somewhat afraid of the unknown. So I think just more
Yeah.
talking about it and just explaining to sort of shed some light, if you will, pun intended, on the subject.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I guess if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way that they can do so?
So my website is conveniently my name,
Okay.
Mayorga.ca. Not that that's particularly easy to memorize, but you can even easily go to Mount Royal University, look at their Reiki program. I have Mount Royal University links on my website, and once you land there, you'll see my name, and my name is my website. But yeah, my website, there's all different options to get a hold of me, book in, register for class, email. Or just email Diana Lynn. No, that's not true. My website email is a little bit longer because it has to include my name, Diana Lynn Mayorga. So it's intuition at Diana Lynn Mayorga. But yeah, just my website is the best way to get a hold of me, and or go through Mount Royal University.
Okay. And you're on Facebook as well? You have
Yeah.
Facebook pages and
Yeah.
things?
Instagram. Yeah. Instagram, Facebook, Instagram. I have it as Diana Ross Mayorga.
Okay.
Because Diana
Awesome.
Ross is my maiden name.
Okay.
Good laugh about that. I always just wait for the jokes. That's why I changed my name because
That's awesome. You know what? Thank you so much for joining me today and just explaining a little bit more about what Reiki is. It's so awesome to have you.
oh, thank you so much. This was great.